Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Prog Mondays. Today we're going to be covering the year 1976 and my personal favourite albums from 1976. There's not a big pile, but the albums that I have included are very, very good. Some of my favourite albums. So some of them I've only got on CD, some of them I've only got on vinyl, so I'll just show you the CD ones first, and then I'll get into the vinyl. This is in no particular order. I've kind of mixed them up as well, so they're not in date order either, so let's just get into the video. So the first one we have here is the Alan Parsons Project. This is Tales of Mystery and Imagination, Edgar Allan Poe. This is a fantastic album actually. I think it was one of the first Alan Parsons Project albums I listened to, and I fell in love with the song The Raven. Very short song, but it's very, very, very good. And it's one of my favourite songs. It's such a badass song, I love it so much. And then I just decided to listen to the whole album. The whole album was fantastic, and I don't know what else to say. It's Alan Parsons Project, it's a fantastic group. This is actually from a box set that I got very recently, which I'll probably cover in my May haul in the next few weeks, but this is a fantastic album. And I completely forgot about this one because as I was compiling my list, I thought, well, this list looks kind of small. There must be something else that came out in this year. And it was this. This is what was missing. So I'm yet to get this on vinyl, so hopefully I'll get it on vinyl soon. But this is a fantastic album. Next one is one that I really ought to have on vinyl now because I've really gotten into this band over the past few months, and it's probably one of my favourite of their discography now, but I just don't have it on vinyl, and that is Interview by Gentle Giant. I really need to get this on vinyl. I've only got, I think, up to Power and the Glory on vinyl, so I need to get this one ASAP. This one was one that I wasn't really familiar with until very later on, so I was only really familiar with like the first 3 or 4 Gentle Giant albums, and then once I got that Unburied Treasure box set, I decided to dig more and more into their discography, learn more about the group, and I came across this album. I came across a live version of the track Interview, which is such a great track. It opens the album, and I was hooked, and I just listened to the whole thing, and I fell in love with it, and it's probably up there with my favourite Gentle Giant albums, as I said. And if you don't know Gentle Giant, where have you been for a while? You know, they're a great group, and definitely one to check out. They've got their own style, which I really love, and this album is quite different to a lot of their previous stuff. Even though it's only 1976 and we're not at the point where, you know, stuff started to change for progressive rock, it's still a bit different to things like Octopus and Three Friends, but it's very much more like jazzy, and I love it. It's fantastic. So that is Interview by Gentle Giant. And now onto the vinyl pile, which is not overly big, but it's still great. So I just realised now this video is probably not going to be very long, but I think the longest one would have been 1971 or 72. So we're past the kind of longer video stage now. So let's just start. Here is the first one. As you can tell by my shirt, I'm also wearing a Trick of the Tail shirt. And so this is Trick of the Tail by Genesis. This is the first studio album without Peter Gabriel and Phil Collins on vocals. This is the first album without Peter Gabriel, and Phil Collins has been pushed onto vocals onto this one. This is a fantastic album. It's still got the same essence as a Peter Gabriel album, but just a little bit different, if that makes any sense. I mean, his vocal style on this album, Phil Collins, is quite reminiscent of Peter Gabriel, so that's probably why I love it so much. Dance on the Volcano is probably my favourite from this album. It's got a lot of great gems on this. This is quite an overlooked album in my opinion. And it's just fantastic. Out of the 2 that came out in this year, Wind and Wuthering is probably my favourite, but I'll get to that in a second. But this is a fantastic album. So this is Genesis, Trick of the Tail, and this came directly after Lamb Lies Down, I believe, so it's quite hard to follow up an album like Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, to be honest. I mean, it's quite hard to follow up an album like Selling England or Nursery Crime, but they did it. Anyway, next I can finally start including some Rush into my videos, because from 1974 backwards I couldn't because they had no albums. But this is 2112 by Rush. This is also 1976, fantastic album. This is the first ever Rush album I ever listened to, and to this day it's probably not my favourite anymore. It was my favourite for a long time until I listened to Hemispheres, and Hemispheres became my favourite, and that is my favourite at the moment. But 2112 will always have a place in my heart as one of the first albums that got me into progressive rock and longer music, more experimental music. I know a lot of you guys in the comments have actually pointed out that Rush isn't a progressive rock band. Explain this album then. Explain this album. Explain the 20-minute long track with the big old story attached to it. It's a progressive rock album, and it's a progressive rock track, and it's a fantastic progressive rock album of 1976. And I think my favourite on here is Tears, which is just like an acoustic number. And that's such a beautiful song. It really is, and I've not really found any live versions of it anywhere. So Rush, if you ever got back together, even though we don't have Neil Peart on our planet anymore, please play the whole of 2112. That'd be great. But yeah, this is great. And also the back, the kimonos. Why can you go wrong? Next up, I might have to take this one out here because of the glare, but this is Still Life by Van der Graaf Generator. This is a band that I've been very much getting into at the moment. I obviously did my review of Porn Hearts a while back now, actually. I was about to say very recently, but that was, it feels like ages ago. And I've listened to God Bluff and a lot of that kind of earlier period, but this was very new to me. But we got it because we wanted to get into Van der Graaf Generator, both me and my dad. So this is very good. I really liked this. This is very different. I mean, I like how all their albums are different, have different sounds attached to them, different ways of making the music. But this is such a great album. I think my favourite is probably the title track, Still Life. It's a fantastic track. Such a beautiful album, and songwriting is on point. I'm a big fan of the songwriting that goes with Van der Graaf Generator. I think that they're a very underrated band in the sense that they are very theatrical as well. We talk about things like Genesis and Peter Gabriel and Jethro Tull with the announcement all being very theatrical, but I think that Peter Hamill of Van der Graaf Generator has got that theatre attached to his voice and his songwriting, so this is one to check out if you haven't yet. Maybe I'll do a review of it because I really loved it. Alright, next up, this is another one that's very new to me. This is Udu Wudu by Magma. Magma is a band that I've been getting into as well lately. I'm very much in that phase of my progressive rock journey where I'm listening to a lot of the outside of UK, very experimental progressive rock, which is what Magma is. I don't even know if Magma even counts as progressive rock anymore. I think it's more like avant-garde, weird stuff. But I absolutely love it. I love Magma so much. And this is probably my favourite of their albums. Just for the track De Futura. Such a cool song. Like, the rhythm is so great. But this is a great album, and I'm a big fan of Magma. This is probably my favourite of them, as I said. Definitely not for the people who are faint of heart, I think. Is that the saying? People who, yeah, I wouldn't give this to someone who was getting into prog. But I do love this. This is very good, and I just love it. I listen to it so much at the moment. I'm tempted to just do a video talking about Magma because I really love them. I've been really getting into them lately. Alright. Next up, we have Moon Madness by Camel, and I talked about Camel very recently in my Mirage, I was about to say Mirage interview, in my Mirage review, but this is, a lot of you guys will agree with me here, is my favourite Camel album. A lot of you guys prefer this one, and I also prefer this one. Such a beautiful sounding album, this. I mean, the cover is so pretty, it's so beautiful, and I just love this band so much. I've been getting into them as well a lot lately. But this is a fantastic record, such beautiful songwriting. I think Song Within a Song is my favourite from this album. I think I heard it on I don't know, it was either a Spotify playlist or a YouTube video somewhere, but I fell in love with that song and I've been listening to it so much. But the whole album is fantastic and definitely a 1976 progressive rock classic. One that you should pick up if you have not listened to anything by Camel that's maybe past Mirage, but that is a fantastic and beautifully written album. Next up, we have one of the many Yes solo albums. This is John Anderson's solo album. I always forget the name of it because I can never read it. Elias of Sunhillow, and it's a beautiful album. It's very, very different to Yes, but not at the same time. It's just great. I'm a big fan of John Anderson and his vocals, and it really works with this album, and the music on this album is just gorgeous. So good. I was kind of late to this one because I listened to the Fish Out of Water album. I think that was one of the first Yes solo albums I listened to. The first one I listened to was the Six Wives of Henry VIII. I listened to that ages ago for the first time. So I was quite late to this one, but this is a great album, and I can't stress enough how much I love Yes, and their solo albums are fantastic as well. I've just gotten one of the Steve Howe solo albums as well, and oh man, this band is so talented, and they can even do great things as individuals. So this is one to pick up if you're a fan of Yes. If you see any smoke coming through here, by the way, I've got an incense stick lit over here. It's lavender scented. It helps me feel calm. So that's, if you see any kind of smoke coming that way, that's what that is. So yeah, this is the John Anderson solo album. I think that might be his first one. Alright, and the very last album on our list today, as I mentioned earlier, we have Wind and Wuthering by Genesis. I was convinced this was 1977, but I checked it up on Google, I fact-checked, and it was 76, so I was so close to not including this, and this is a beautiful, beautiful album. I mean, the cover is just stunning. Afterglow. That's all I need to say. That is one of my favourite songs of all time. One of my favourite post-Peter Gabriel era Genesis songs, and just a gorgeous album. It's so moving, it's so beautifully written, and just everything. I think this is probably the last album by Genesis that I actually can safely say that I like, because I haven't really listened to much after it. I've not listened to much 80s Genesis. Of course I know the hits, but there are some gems in there. I like some of the stuff that I've heard, but not too much. But this is a fantastic album, Wind and Wuthering, 1976. If you haven't listened to this yet, do it. It's a beautiful album. It's so great, and a lot of emotion in it. I think the first time I ever heard Afterglow, I cried. I think I actually did cry, because I was just so moved by how beautiful the songwriting was, and just everything about it, the musical arrangements. Alright, so that is the end of today's video. Let me know what your favourite albums of 1976 are. These are just my favourite ones from 1976, just progressive rock. I've probably got a lot of 1976 albums that aren't prog that I really love. Things like A Day at the Races by Queen. You know, there's all that kind of jazz. So yeah, I will see you guys on Wednesday for a Wednesday review, and so forth. See you guys then. Bye bye.